Okay, we're about to get started. I know we still have a few residents getting some refreshments, and we did that on purpose to try to sweeten everybody up for the meeting today. So anyway, we'll give them a second to get seated, and really appreciate everyone being here. A great opportunity to gather, share some information, talk a little bit about our financial results this year, and look at of course, the fiscal year 27 budget. Hard to believe we're entering in a new fiscal year in just a very short amount of time. But again, it's been an exciting year, and so for the most part, Gordon and Debbie and I are going to tag team the presentation. We'll go through, there's a lot of slides, but we want to get through them, and then we'll have a Q&A session afterward. And in addition to that, we'll remain afterward because sometimes residents like to ask questions in private. So anyway, a great time today. I want to recognize our resident board members that are present. I saw Colonel Rick Wright with us, and please identify yourself. All right. We have, I don't know if Carol Hebner, I don't believe I saw her yet. Also Sharon Taylor, I don't believe I saw Sharon arrive yet. And then Colonel Crabtree, thank you for being here. I also want to recognize one of our non-resident board members who's attending, Mr. J.J. Montanero, and he'll be joining the board officially September 1st, and we'll be doing his orientation in August. So thank you very much for being here and joining our incredible team. So again, having been at the ARC for over 8 years now, it's really been an incredible journey, and there's been a great deal of change. I know we've all endured that together, but really things are heading in a really good direction. Very thankful for the time I've been here, and although we have had challenges over the years, the momentum is really going strong right now, and I think we're finishing this year and heading into a very exciting 27 with all 8 cylinders hitting, and we're very excited about this next year coming up. So as we get started, I'm going to ask Emily to please hit number 5, and we'll kind of turn these bright chandeliers off, and you should be able to see the slides a little better, I hope. All right. So we'll go through these. Again, I'm going to go ahead and get started as we do have a lot of slides to go through, and a lot of them are financial in nature. So what I wanted to start with was a couple of years ago, and looking at our whole financial situation, trying to always be good stewards of our resources, I asked Cindy Chamont to chair a cost savings task force, cost savings or cost avoidance. And this is really an incredible summary. And by the way, we're going to record this town hall, so it will be in the library and on the portal afterward. So these are examples of this task force, which represented staff members from all different departments that were involved in purchasing, inventory management, expense control. So they identified all these areas over the last couple of years as far as cost savings. And we have what we call baked them into the budget now. Most of them are capital in nature, but right at $930,000. So we've been working really hard to be efficient, good stewards, and the team involved in these areas, so we're very thankful for that work. So again, left my glasses over on my chair, but additionally, we just finished implementing Ilmex 360. Thank you very much. I lost my good pair, so I'm down to a spare that are all scratched up. We did implement Ilmex 360. It's our main clinical, financial, resident care software program across all departments. We've got that finished. It's really helping us with efficiencies and documentation, and it's got a little bit of AI embedded, so it helps guide folks on documentation and not leaving things blank, and just helping you to be more efficient, making sure we're documenting interventions and things like that with care plans. So Cindy's not here today. I would recognize her for leading that committee and also leading the charge on our Ilmex 360 conversion. But we did get that finished, and we're still working out a few bugs. I know you noticed some things with the statements and some of the titles. I think we've got most of that worked through. But we appreciate your patience, and it is a great program and will really help us moving forward. So with that, I'm going to ask Gordon to come on up, and he's going to share some great information. And then again, we'll be tag teaming this. And
Thank you, Steve. I'll put this up here. One person told me, who lives here, he's a general, that if you tied my hands down, I couldn't talk. So we'll put this up here. And I'm Gordon Shoger. I've been here 9 years and have done this every year since then, since 2017. I remember the first one when the auditorium was the other direction, and it was Dave Fulbright and I. And I remember the very first question we got after the presentation was, why do we have to have a pet deposit? And I turned to Dave and said, Dave, I think that's your question. So just glad to be able to present some really positive financial information to y'all. The first part is going to be where we are in fiscal year 26 and then going on to the 27 budget. And I appreciate everybody coming in. It's almost a full room, and I appreciate that. Like I say, I've been here 9 years, and we've seen the ups and downs. We've seen entrance fees high. We've seen them low. We've seen the operating high. We've seen it now lower this year. So there's a lot of good news to share, and we'll get started. This first slide shows this past year and the green being actual occupancy and independent living above budget most of the year, and still is now, as we're hovering right around 90%. One way or the other, but every year we budget a gradual increase over the year from where we start, and then hopefully, and with a lot of work, we end up higher than that. But then we go to the next slide, and you can see where budget is black and actual is green. So over the years since 2022, and by every 6 months, there's been a little bit of a variation from budget, up and down. Different things have happened, but we try to create the budget so that it does show an increase over the year, over the fiscal year, but then you have to start over at the beginning of the next fiscal year back where reality is. So we were looking at the last year there, 26, as one of the best that we've had. This next slide is through, this is almost every single slide here has been presented to the Board of Directors in early June in the Finance Committee of the Board of Directors. So this is through March 31st, we're ahead of budget nicely. If you got the Emma report, you're going to see we're at 95% on the operating rate, which is unprecedented since I've been here to have 3 quarters with that type of financial results. And then the capital, about where you'd expect it for through the spending through April, through most of the year, still some money left. And then entrance fees, as we talked about in many different, and we will continue to talk about that success, and entrance fee cash coming in, being a bit above budget by $3.5 million. Okay, there we go. These are just, I'll hit a couple of these. One, why are we better than budget this year? It's a couple of different things. You just saw the independent living census being above budget, but also the Medicare TRICARE budget is, we've exceeded that nicely, strongly, abundantly, and with great enjoyment of that extra revenue, but with that goes extra expense. As you can see in the middle there, the Medicare TRICARE is over $1 million above budget, whereas the direct expense for Medicare is almost $600,000 above budget as well. So there's a correlation there. When the Medicare days go up, then we have to supply those extra services for those folks that are on that level of care. Then you see some other things, water and electric, dining, labor, and then the entrance fees coming in through March 31st was 35. We think we're going to end up, and we're pretty close, I'm sure we will, right at 43 for the whole year, which is one of our best years. One thing that's kind of overlooked sometimes is 10% of those entrance fees, because they're non-refundable, actually go into and count towards the operating budget. The other money goes towards capital expenditures and paying the bond indebtedness. Go to the next one here. See, this is just high-level metrics and report from the Emma report, which is a quarterly report that we do every year, every quarter, and with through the first, second, and third quarter is we generate that internally, and then the fourth quarter is audited, and that'll come out in September. But this one just came out in May through March 31st, and you can see that the main thing there is core service revenue 0.4 increased by 10% over the year before, whereas expenses only increased by 3.3. That's an unusual thing, and that's back to the Medicare and back to the higher census. As we get higher in census anywhere on the campus, there's a point where we hit break even as far as our fixed costs. And then the variable costs for each additional person actually are fairly low. So once you cover your fixed costs, your variable costs are much easier to cover for just one more person, one more couple coming in, and then you have that extra revenue that goes against that. So the results become very leveraged once you get above the budgeted revenue, budgeted census. Go to the next slide. Now this is another metric. I just have to say I have several slides that are new, and they were sent to the board and part of their package as well, but I have several charts like this that are new at the request of a certain resident, and I appreciate her involvement and her request and to add more clarification to what actually is out there. Some of these reports that I'll present, just columns and numbers and people glaze over. I like charts, so charts is a good thing. We actually later on, to great fanfare, we're going to have some pie charts. So I know that we'll build the whole meeting will build as a crescendo to seeing the pie charts. So just hold your breath, and we'll get there. It's down towards the end. I don't want anybody to leave before we get there, but you might get tired of this. But anyway, debt service coverage ratio. Okay, now what does that mean? That means basically in raw terms, that is the cash that comes into the community compared to what we have to pay every year to service our debt, our bond covenants. And that number, the denominator there is the amount of both bond interest and principal that we have to pay off every year. Now, the way they measure that is 1 year out in the future, it's at its highest point, which is 8.25 million. And right, this year it's a little bit lower than that. It's about 7.8, 7.9. But you always have to use that highest point within the coverage. And so we can see that at 1 year, 1 quarter back there in 2025, we dipped down. Now, that seems alarming. Look where we are now at 2.8. But the 1 year, there is 1 quarter that had low entrance fees coming in, and we didn't cross that boundary of 1.2. There's no covenant effect to that because the only time there are bond covenant people, our bondholders look at that and are concerned, and the real measurement point, the metric is yearly. So at the 4th quarter, we've always exceeded that and exceeded it quite nicely. And this year we're looking at into the high 2s because we've already got 3 quarters under our belt, above 2 and 2.5. So we're looking in good shape there. This is another slide that I always present to the board about what's coming up. This is $5 million in July 15th, and the money is there due to the entrance fees that have come in and the other cash that we've talked about census being up and Medicare reimbursement. So we'll be able to make this payment out of the operating funds, and we won't need to dip into Frost investments, which we've had to in the past when cash receipts have been on the lean side. So this is also good news in that we're cash flowing to make these payments. Next slide. Okay. Now this is another good news. Our Frost investments have grown considerably over the past year. The one account is almost 19% gain, and the other is above 8. And as you probably, some of you, maybe many of you follow the stock market, this fluctuates with the stock market pretty close. Not exactly because it's a 60-40 typical investment fund for a nonprofit like us. So it's 60% equity and 40% bonds. But as you can see, there's good solid gains since June 30th of last year. This is another way of showing this, courtesy of a resident that encouraged me to put more graphical information up. This shows where the Frost investments have been ever since 4Q of 21. And you can see where they dip down, and you see the other side of it. You see the growth in the investments and different things. The big jump there in 22 is when we received the money from Philadelphia on the hail damage lawsuit. Big jump up there, about 13.6 million. And then the other side of it at the bottom is the counterpoint to that, where we've had to make withdrawals from those Frost accounts to either pay the bond payments or unusual capital expense. For example, in 2025, part of that put came out and went towards the chillers that were about $1,487,000 on the for the high rise. The chillers, the big machines in the basement bowels of the earth, machines, and they were very expensive, but they were same age as the building. So they were a little bit worn out. They run 24/7, 365. So those had to be new. So you can see where we took money out to cover those. And then, my goodness, okay, we're at the budget, okay. I don't prepare remarks, but I prepare a lot of slides. So sometimes I see a slide and it's like, oh yeah, okay, good, start. We'll talk about the budget. You've seen this before, and some memorable years back there when inflation spiked up. It's come back a little bit closer to normal. In the deep dark past, it was fairly low for many, many years. Most of you in this, I'm sure all of you in this room remember when it was way above 10 points. I remember as a young man thinking, you know, how would you buy a house when the interest rates are 18%? It was pretty scary, but it did come back down, and it took a while for that all to get squeezed out of the economy. I think we're still seeing some of that now. We can see this recent spike up. There's been the upside of gas prices, and the downside also. I saw at Walmart the other day, they're back down $2.94. Had been as high as $4. So a lot of volatility there, but that filters all the way through the economy, everything that everybody buys, and of course everything that we buy here. This is a slide that kind of have to explain a little bit what it means, but it's that inflation into our core service expenses, as we report in the EMA, is the blue line. And you can see how those have spiked up from a baseline of 2022 and have spiked up higher in certain years with high inflation. And now the spike is not quite as much per year. And then the red line is what our rate increases for the monthly fees have been each year. So we're catching up. We're not quite there yet, but there's still a gap from a baseline of 4 or 5 years ago now. So that just shows, and what I take out of this to make it more of an apples to apples, if that's a good way to compare it, I take out those Medicare direct expenses because they have fluctuated and gone up quite a bit. It wouldn't be fair to this comparison if those were in there, but our other expenses go up considerably as well. And as I alluded to, here's the Medicare TRICARE revenue and expenses. Expenses are the red line at the bottom, and you can see where they follow the revenue, but there's a pretty good gap. And throughout my 30-year history, coming up very closely, 1996, I started work at a community in Austin, and they had Medicare, and they expanded Medicare from 2 to 3 to 4 to 20 over the time that I was there. I've seen the same thing here, and what happens is that increases your revenue, a big multiplier on the revenue, because you're looking at $500 to $600 a day on the revenue. Meanwhile, the expenses are $400 or maybe more because of all the extra therapy and everything else that you have to provide for someone on Medicare. Almost everything comes through on the Medicare expense and has to be paid by the provider, which would be us. A few things are excluded, like cancer drugs and other things. Dialysis is excluded. But the therapy and everything else that goes with it, including your normal meds, are part of the Medicare package. And then we have TRICARE as well, which we've branched out, and that's been very good. But so your expenses are very high, but there is a profit margin, as you can see. And this is 2026 hitting a high there of almost $6 million. And then we back that off a little bit for the 27 budget because you just can't. One thing about revenue and senior living, you can't keep your pedal to the metal on everything because not everything is going to go right. And just because things went right doesn't mean they're going to go exactly all right next time. So you got to have a moderate place in all things moderation. I think that's scripture somewhere. But you can see where the gap there helps us, and that's part of the reason that we're better than budget in 26. This is some of the same information, but it's census. How many people in a bed, heads in beds? Did I get that right? Right, okay. That's a little foreign to a finance guy, but being around nursing homes for a long time, that's what they say when nobody else is around. So, and basically we're averaging in the 29, almost 30, and we budgeted for this current year at 26 at 20.5, 21.5. We bumped that up to 25, which I think is pretty aggressive, because the thing is about Medicare and TRICARE, both throughout any week, throughout any month, throughout any 6 months, any period you pick, your census can fluctuate greatly. People come in, they get treatment, they leave, and sometimes you have 4 people come in and 6 people go out the same day. The discharges and admits are overwhelming sometimes to your nursing crew. Another story that we talked about before is property insurance. And this is global. It wasn't just that they picked on the Army residence community here in San Antonio with property insurance. It's all the way across the world. Back there in 23, it exploded. Our cost went from $322 for the pure property insurance to over $1.1 million just in that 1 year, just for coverage, the same coverage that we had before always. So it's very hard to get, but we were able to get Travelers to step in and cover us. Same way again these next 2 years, it's moderated some, and hopefully will continue to soften the market for property insurance. But it all depends on how many disasters there are, sad to say, across the entire world, because our property insurance and other insurance companies, they have a way of making money no matter what happens. And so when they suffer losses, they pass it along to people like us buying insurance. Food costs have been a big driver in years past, not so much this year, but still an increase year over year into 26. You see they're based on 21. And if y'all been out to the supermarket, it's like, well, things are not going up as fast, but they're still going up. Eggs are cheaper. Proteins, other proteins like beef is astronomical, and there's lots of reasons for that. But you know, the other proteins, anything that's a protein is going to be higher priced than it was. Employee health insurance is another cost factor. We've seen explode in the last couple of years, and we're now with Blue Cross Blue Shield, one of the biggest biggest companies in the world, basically, and that's the best we can do as far as a renewal. Coming up this year, they're talking about a 30% increase in our costs. Our claims are way up, and the cost of those claims are way up as well. So that's a big driver. The other thing that we did, which I think is important, and it was Steve's idea, to go out to neighboring other competitor companies, not particularly tech companies, but other companies in middle strata like we are, and what are they offering for benefits? What's their cost per person per month, which is one metric that they use, and what do we look like in the overall market? Are we rich in our plan, or are we middle? Are we low end? And we're really right in the middle of everybody else. There's other places where they pay a lot more of the premium for the employee. We have a split, and the employees do pay part of it, but most of it is paid by the employer, us. But that's fairly typical across the San Antonio and across the nation. I need music in between while I'm drinking or something. I don't know what need some background music, a little violent, Mozart, something, you know, really easy. But Vivaldi would be good as well. The inflation metrics here, as we look at other areas besides, well, food's in there listed, but some other things that we buy all the time. You can see the property insurance coming down a little bit, but other things, employee health insurance, like I mentioned. Plumbing repairs, now we capitalize a lot of plumbing repairs because they're more than $3,000, but these are the smaller fix, and we've had a lot more of those. It's an aging building, this one, and others on this side of the campus, but we're also seeing infrastructure on the other side, especially when we get into looking at capital. As far as the air conditioning, some of those buildings are 10, 12 years old, and the air conditioning is starting to get to its useful life. I don't know why, but we use a lot of air conditioning here in San Antonio. Or else I couldn't live here, but so you can see all expenses going up 3.3. And then other things related in the food category, cold and hot beverages, eggs even up a little bit. They hit a low and now they're started back up, but proteins are a big expense. Disposable paper supplies, dairy products, everything inching up. Not like they were before, but still there's inflation in there, and this is over the past year, and this is actual spending. So then we get to the actual budget after all that explaining why we have to go up on our rates. Just plain speaking, because our costs go up. And the operating rate is a great departure from where we've been before in that it's under 100. And maybe I've explained it before, but it's easy to explain. If you're at 100% on your operating rate, every single dollar that comes in is being spent. And then if you're above 100, that means you're spending more than what you bring in. So at this point, with a 99, we've got a 1% profit margin built into the operating rate. We're going to bring in if everything goes according to budget, and it won't. But if it did, it would be 1% of a profit margin. And how do we get there? Then we've got the independent census ramping up, like I showed earlier, with hopefully, and with the great work of our marketing department staying above 90 for the whole year average, and then ending up at 91% at the end of 12 months. We've seen make some good progress over these past 12 months, 18 months, and we have, I think it's 21 queued up for still to move in, around 18 or 19 to queue up to after the new fiscal year. Somebody nod their head back there for me. Very good. Okay, good. So about 20 more coming in, which we've never seen that. Steve and I have never seen that, Debbie either. That type of activity and that strong pipeline to come in before through the summer. Typically, our first quarter is weak, one of the weakest quarters, and we finish strong. Well, we're finishing strong every quarter right now, and very thankful for that. And then, as you can see, and I'm sure you've heard, we've announced it in the resident council about the 4.3 rate increase on September 1st at all levels of care. Some more metrics here about that. The wage increases for all employees is 2.5%. And then what is 1% of the overall budget is $426,000, which means the whole budget is $42,000,006. And then budgeted move-ins, that's a big driver, as I noted. 42 for this next year. We're looking at 43 for this year. And last year we budgeted, last year, fiscal year 25, we had 22. So it's a big jump up. And you'll see this split then between Capit's development plan and traditional units. And the reason we're doing that is sometimes traditional units come back to us and they don't need, maybe somebody has not been there for 30 years. It has been a shorter time frame to be turned back to us in inventory. And maybe it was refurbed 10 years ago, 8 years ago, 6 years ago. A lot of those only need a refresh. A lot of those maybe need a new kitchen, new bathrooms, and they don't need we make the decision now, which is new since Terry's been here, and I give her all the credit on that, is that we're looking at each unit that comes back. Tabitha is a big part of that. We evaluate every unit that comes back into inventory, and then does it make sense to do a full-blown, rip everything out to the studs kind of refurb for a campus development plan, or can we leave it mostly intact, bring it to current standards, and have then an entrance fee come back out of it. And what we've been able to do with that too also is the CDP units, because of those extra costs, are higher. It costs more to do it, so we have a higher entrance fee on those. The traditional units, we've backed that off, and those entrance fees are lower. Our investment's not as higher, but there still is what I look for is that we have, that we average and that I would say we hit it most of the time, if not more than most of the time, is that there's 100,000 difference between what we spend on it to what we bring in for an entrance fee. What we spend to refurb might be 200, and then if we can clear an entrance fee of 300, that's good, because we need that 100,000 to pay to pay the debt, the bonds, capital expenses, everything else that comes our way that's not operating. And this is new entrance fees. Over clear back to 2020, we had 47. And then COVID put the clamps down pretty hard, different things, and we rebounded from that. There were a lot of reasons given to us about the 2024, some internal, some external. We didn't really see that as far as a marketing department, as far as operational, we were not doing, to my knowledge, anything radically different or much different at all in that time frame, but there was a very volatile political climate in 24. And a lot of folks decided to just wait. They told us that. We're just going to wait to see what happened with the election, because they weren't sure which way it was going to go. We didn't press them on which way they wanted it to go. That's kind of their business. But a lot of volatility there in the overall market, stock markets and other things. Real estate market was very pushed down as far as depressed. And then things have rebounded this past year. And you can see in late 25 and through 26, we're up in fiscal year 26 up to 43, and then we budgeted 42 going forward. Our average, I think that's on the next page maybe, we'll see that, but our average is about 34.6 over all those years. Then where does that 4.3 fit into the overall, what everybody else is doing, because that's kind of a consideration too. We have a lot of competitors, And we're happy to say that the one in particular competitor who won't be named on the other side of town, the initials are BS, okay? You can read into that, whatever you want to read into that. But we get inquiries from them and from folks there who want to move here. I don't know why. Maybe it's a dining program, maybe it's our prices. Debbie presented some information there a few days ago about their Father's Day buffet. And so that was very interesting to see what they had to pay compared to what our residents have to pay here for we pay less for more. When you compare the two menus, just like this. So this last year, in 25, 26, the average across the nation, according to Ziegler, was 4.69. Ours was 4.5. And then the national average projected into this year is 4.3, and ours is 4.30. So about in that same range. The costs are hitting CCRCs all across the nation, pretty much like they do here, and nobody really gets to escape it. We're at one of the lower parts of the country as far as staff labor and other costs in Texas. That's why everybody's moving here from the higher cost states. But still, once you're there at that price level, things go up from there. So we still have this increase across the nation. What does that mean? What does that increase mean for the average monthly maintenance fee? Nobody in here is average, so we'll figure that out. But on average, it's $185 a month at the 4.3, and that's comparable to what we've had in prior years. And then what does that do for us as far as revenue? With a September 1st implementation date is about $1.1 million for extra revenue for this next year. Then in nursing, because it goes all the way across, assisted living, nursing, memory care, these are daily rates and what those increases are for those daily rates as well. We have the rate increase letters, which will go out here in just a few days. The rate increase is effective on September 1st. And then, so we have 60 days back from that exactly, is July 2nd. So we count every day, and then we plan to get them out before then, but it may be July 2nd, yes. And a little more history. So where we're at, you see over 11 years, it's a 4.18 on the average maintenance fees, and then entrance fees have gone up, depending on the market and depending on how those have gone up. You can see the 1 year when we switched to development plan and the extra expense, we also pushed entrance fees about 35% in that 1 year. And then it's kind of ratcheting back to normal since then. And the next one is operating rate history, which is one of those things that you really don't want to look at from a financial guy's standpoint, but there it is. You're looking at over 100 most years and a loss. And then projected this year, how much better than that, and then the budget for 99, which is the first time since I've been here, which we've budgeted under 100. The question always comes up, well, how can you do that? Well, we have entrance fees. And the entrance fee revenue, the entrance fee cash, I should clarify, the entrance fee cash that has come in has enabled us to cover those losses. But then, as I noted in an earlier slide, sometimes that extra cash has to come out of reserves at Frost. So here's another chart, since I like charts. So, and other people who came to visit me and we talked about charts, so we're just really proud of that. So this shows that some of that same information basically over time. You see us dipping below 100 a couple times, and then our plan is to stay below 100 and to get into this 98 range for operating rate going forward, which we need to for multiple reasons. Not only to build confidence in the community from the outside people looking in, like the S&P bond raters and bond purchasers and the bond markets, in case we ever need those again, but also from a build reserves and be more secure, be stronger every year by having that extra cash in the bank, basically. Let's see. And this is the census budget for this year, and ramping up a little bit each month as we typically do. It's not a whole lot of imagination brought into this, but it's got to be there. So we have growing each month up to 91 in June, and Terry assures me that we'll beat that number, right? Yes, okay. So what's the budget look like as far as big picture? We have service revenue, and that's everything that comes in day to day, the monthly service fees, the 10% of the entrance fees, as I mentioned, and then the service expense, the utilities, food, dining expense, labor is a big part, as we'll see in a pie chart pretty soon. And then service net income actually is $5 million of income on the year. But then there's more to the income statement, which we'll look over here. And so you bring that forward, we do have those investments in Frost, and this is interest and dividends, which are cash coming in. It's not just a gain, it's only the cash that comes in as interest and dividends. You see that budget a little bit more than we did this last year with that opportunity that we have with Frost. And service expense, as we noted before. And of course, we have interest on the bonds and a few things related to those bond interests and other expenses that go along with that coming out on the support foundation side. So then the math there is pretty straightforward. Leaves us with a net cash gain of 426 and that 99% operating rate. So, okay, hang on. We have to take a minute. Well, these are backed by popular requests. I can say it's not my idea, but it was a great idea that we add the pie charts. So I know there was a gasp of excitement there, but you just have to realize how important these are. I'm sorry. Well, it is good information. I need to not be sarcastic. Okay, so this is revenue, and you can see most of it comes from independent living, the folks in this room. And assisted living is another part, and you have private pay. Nursing, Medicare continues to creep up and be more each year. 10% of the entrance fee, as I mentioned. And then ancillary is, we also have a pie chart on that coming up, so I just want to warn you, you might want to sit down. But then dividends and interest, as I noted. So that's like your 42.6 million on that, on the revenue. And this is ancillary, which is a new chart, which shows us we have guest rooms. We have the main two are the beauty shop and the guest meals, and all the other things. The total is it's $700,000, but there's all these different pieces that add up, different things that are extra. People pay for extra, like I said, guest rooms, extra transportation, beauty shop, and all the way down the line. With, of course, delivery fees are an important part there too as well, at 1%. So then we have expenses, another pie chart, and with everything in it, including bond interest. If you take the bond interest out, your salary and benefits are pushing between 55 and 60 now of everything that we pay. So salaries and benefits is still the lion's share of the expenses. Have other things in there, repairs and maintenance, Medicare expense, like I talked about, insurance has stayed pretty stable. It fluctuates, it's going up now, but then food is always a requirement because people live here. So then we have, we're done with the pie chart, so you can relax now. We have the budget metrics over the last 3 years as far as the budgets. 25 is 101.8. Last year was 100.5. Now we're at 99. You can see the budgeted gains are lost there, coming across finally with a gain. And then the service fee increases that we've seen in the past, 4.8, and employee wage increases. And then the capital budget is pretty stable year to year between last year and this year. A little more detail on that. Turn to page 17 in your hymnal. Yes. If somebody knows what that is, they get a special prize. So the capital budget, obviously from year to year, not too many changes. Actually, the unit turnover is going down because, as you saw earlier, may not have captured it in the reference there, but in the cost savings, we brought some activities in-house and saved money there, and our actual turnover costs have come down marginally, but still I think they've come down from year to year. So you see unit turnover being lower than it was from year to year, from 26 to 27. And then an increase like we typically have in repairs and maintenance, life cycle and rebuild. Street repairs, I've been working with James on that, and we've done some already this year, and plan to do about $250,000 every year for the next at least 2 more years. Doughboy and other parking lots need to be resurfaced. Some of them, I think, date from when they built the building, and they were using World War II surplus machines to do the paving. I don't know, but it was a long time ago. So there's a lot of work there to be done. We need to spread it out, but we need to get it done at a higher rate. And let's see what else is going on here. We've got the ILU refurb program, which is through Tabitha's office, and she's gone all the way back to the beginning as far as the people that have been here the longest, and brought there with a refresh to anybody who wants one. And she continues to work through that. She's getting closer into, I think it's 2010 or 2011 now, of those folks that moved in that year, to offer them a refurb. It's a modest refurb, but it is a refurb. New appliances and new surfaces for the most part. Then with our new contract that we've offered, starting last year, Life Steps, we expect to see some capital go out of that. This is an estimate. Those folks had a year waiver before they could use that money, and some of them will use the money right away now that they could use under that Life Steps program, but many will use the discounts that they get over time going into the future. So we're not sure exactly how that works, but I think we only have about 7 or 8 of those folks right now on contract. So it's starting up in a placeholder for now. This next slide, we did get some questions, and I'm sure there's going to be questions about what the name change committee is doing. That was this budget per se for them to be able to do things and spend money and execute what they need to work on. To get to that end, there's 3 staff members, 3 residents, and 3 board members on the 9-member committee, and they're going to be working over this summer to get to a recommendation for the board in September or maybe November as they get through that. So next slide, we have then capital projects. This one always impresses me because it's a big number at the bottom, and it's what we did, James and Tabitha's department, all of us throughout management have worked on these projects, the chillers, the generators, the high-rise towers, sprinkler, plumbing, a lot of, look at the dollars that are gone into this building. And this is outside of, this doesn't include this whole refurb here. This was $42 million to do everything that was, everything that was redone to this room and all the corridors and the dining room and everything else. This is outside of that because a lot of this you don't see every day. How many of you have been to the chillers in the bowels of the earth? Please don't admit it. But they're impressive, they're big, and they're new, and hopefully they'll last another 40 years. But they're expensive, and so all of this, and over the last clear back to 22, almost 13 million that we plowed back into the nuts and bolts and everything that runs, and like I say, air conditioning. You just can't live without it here in Texas. Then on the horizon, this is a good news and yet to be better type of slide. In November, I used to just talk about this in theoretical terms, and people would kind of wink and nod, yes, okay, sure. But actually back in November, we got a check for $2.6 million. That shows on the earlier slide where it went into Frost and is now invested, of a ERC, Employee Retention Credit. This is a plan that was carried over from COVID, and they're still paying money out, and we qualified for 2 different quarters in 2021. So it's kind of old news at this point, but we were very happy to get part of it. The one claim back there in November put in the bank. We still think that we're going to receive the second claim and this 2Q21, which is at least $2 million and maybe some interest on top of that. When we got the money in November, they sent us, as in the check, okay, is $635 of interest, which we were not expecting. So the IRS kind of does what they want and when they want, but we're hoping they want to go ahead and send us this $2 million and soon. So the tricky part is that to qualify, let's make sure I get this right. if you qualify for the first quarter, like we did, and we got the money, okay, the calculations I sent off were about 1.5 inches thick, you automatically qualify for the second quarter. And that's just the way they wrote the law. So we've gotten paid on the first quarter. It's fairly automatic, except they came back with a few questions about the second quarter. The auditing firm that worked with us to get it done, national firm, Clifton Larson Allen, responded. I helped them respond and got all their questions answered. So now it's just a question of waiting. But because we got paid on the first one, the only thing that could stop us on the second one is maybe an act of Congress or something to shut off the money totally. But within the statute, if you qualify for the first, you get the second. So we're pretty sure we're going to end up with that at some point. We just don't know when. And then the final slide is another chart with days cash on hand. And a lot of you saw this when we did the eligibility presentation and what happens to our days cash on hand when we have a prosperous year, and then when we don't, when entrance fees are high and when they're low. And so we're working back up from a low of 271 last fall. And then the big increase there you see in 22, 23, that was the Philadelphia settlement on the damage from the hail. The hail damage settlement came in, boosted us way back up. But without the we need entrance fees. Without the entrance fees being steady and strong and basically above budget, if that's possible, we tend to erode these cash balances. And that was one of the major arguments that I made about eligibility, is that we just need more people to broaden that pool of eligible folks to come in and pay that entrance fee and join this great community that we all enjoy. And I think we have Steve. Thank you.
Great job, Gordon. He's amazing, and we're very blessed to have him and his talent. So a lot of work goes into creating a budget like this and trying to manage our financial outlook. So great job, Gordon. Appreciate it. Before we get into the Q&A, I just wanted to offer a few comments. I mentioned it at our coffee talk last week, but really some of the most positive momentum since I've been here. I think I mentioned March, April, and May. We averaged 90% occupancy in IL and also the entire campus. So assisted living, healthcare, really been doing well, and having an OR under 100 is a very strong way to end our fiscal year. We also are entering the fourth year of our strategic plan. We've been working the strategic plan and implementing that for the last 3 years. So now we're embarking on another 3-year cycle, and we're working with Colonel Rick Wright and the Strategic Planning Committee to look at our goals and metrics that we measure and update those for the next 3-year cycle. But a lot of incredible outcomes have come from that plan, and I want to thank everybody that's been supportive of it. It's very important, and we look forward to continuing that. Gordon pulled up a slide about capital investments, and we measure that through a financial metric called average age of physical plant, and ours is now about 8.5 years, and the industry average is about 13 years, and one of our friendly competitors in town, who we won't mention, theirs is at about 20 years. So it demonstrates we're investing back into this organization. We're making sure the systems and the infrastructure is very strong, and it's going to serve us for another 40 years. And you saw all of those areas that we tackled. And so we're not deferring maintenance. We're working hard on those areas. I think I saw Robert Martinez in here. Healthcare continues to blow the doors out, not only occupancy with Medicare census, but our 5-star rating, the kind of quality of care. And what we don't talk about a whole lot is the outcomes, especially through therapy. Some of the outcomes are like twice what Medicare and the national measurements say. Let's say someone had a health episode. Medicare says they should be about here when they finish their rehab, and our outcomes are way the heck up there. So fabulous job, an incredible team, and we appreciate Robert and Faye and John and all the leaders there. And really, I see Stephanie in the back in HR, but we continue to do a great job with workforce, retention, recruitment, We keep our turnover well below industry norms, and it's been around 38%. The industry is really high as far as turnover, especially certain positions. And, as far as vacancies, we have about 400 coworkers, and we run about sometimes 15 vacancies, but that's really incredible given what happens in our field. And a lot of organizations have to hire temporary agencies to come in, supplement the staff. A lot of problems with that, and I've never wanted to embrace that, and we have not had to do that here. And one of the other great successes is Debbie Hargett and promoting her to COO. This has been 1 year anniversary for Debbie, and she's been phenomenal. So I really want to recognize her and all of her contributions. So really, before the Q&A, we're going to continue to respond to residents' wants and needs and changes, what's happening in the marketplace, financial, operational, real estate. It's a very complex area. But our goals are going to continue like they've been, and they're embedded in our strategic plan: resident satisfaction, occupancy, financial performance, philanthropy, culture of employees, and a culture of civility among all of us. So we've come a long way, and I just want to thank all the residents, the board members, and the staff that are helping us move forward. It's really an incredible time. So with that, we're going to go ahead and start the Q&A, and Debbie and Gordon will be glad to answer all your questions. I'm just kidding. I think Emily's got a microphone and Felicia has one. So we'll pass these around, and the three of us will entertain any questiones or compliments too. We love those.
I've got a question about the high-rise roof. I see are removing what was left of the hot water glass tubes up there. What is the plan for the future?
Yeah, the solar panels on top of the high-rise were put up there a long time ago for as we understand it was before all of our time, but a thermal hot water heating system didn't work, so it was abandoned. At least that's what I've learned over the years. So we're looking at ways of getting those off of the roof. It's very expensive, so we haven't wanted to hire a crane and bring them out to take them down. We're hoping there'd be some way to get some salvage value from that. And there's also some issues with the way they're mounted into the roof. It may create some problems when we remove those. So we're looking at some different options, and I would love to have working solar up there that would actually do something for us. So we're going to continue looking at that, and I believe the ARC Fit Committee is going to be looking at that this year as well. We had a couple of bids just to take everything off, but we haven't pulled the trigger on that yet. Wasn't it the best plan?
Steve, with the thing of the name change, this is the latest talk on campus. How much is that going to cost, and who's going to pay for it?
Okay, yeah, good question about the name change committee. There was a slide up here that does show that the board approved $200,000 to undertake a name change, and that would include a lot of other areas if we go that direction. Can we turn the chandeliers off? I'm so sorry. So it includes everything: signage, branding, uniforms. So that'd be a kind of a top-end budget. We don't know that we'll use all of that. But again, when we did the eligibility study, there was overwhelming comments at that time, almost 100% to change the name. So the board took that seriously. They appointed a 9-person committee, and as Gordon said, hopefully September or November we'll have a recommendation. And some folks in this room have mentioned Army might have not applied if you weren't Army. There's other prospects that have looked at Army and said, that's not for me. But whatever we do, we want to make sure we honor that tradition and that history and somehow bring that forward. We have a professional consultant as part of that money to lead us through the committee, to look at branding guidelines, and we've really communicated to the committee the values we developed as part of our strategic plan. I call that a sacred cow. We're not going to dishonor any of those values. So whatever we come up with as a potential name needs to really resonate well with that. So that's kind of the process, and we hope by either September or November we'll have a recommendation. So onward.
Yeah, my question was related to that. Is it a given we're going to change the name, or could we end up back where we are now?
Yeah, the direction we have is to make a recommendation for a new name and a new branding package to the board. So that's our direction at this point.
Steve, I had a question here. Since the decision was made to change the eligibility requirements and all, what has been the impact of that? How many new residents do we have that have come in with that? Do we have a number?
Yeah, I mean, initially of the last group of entrance fees we've received, out of 10 of them, 3 of them were newly eligible. So it's somewhere around 20 to 25%. The inquiries are probably about 15 to 20% of newly eligible. But this is relatively new. We just launched that, and we're, pivoting in our advertising strategy and really trying to blanket San Antonio, this region, and Texas, while still targeting some of those military populations nationally. But we've seen some pretty good uptick and good momentum, and it's really helping us at this point.
Is there anything in the budget for the replacement of Water's Edge chairs? They're kind of in sad shape right now.
The answer to that is yes. We're doing a formal review of all of those chairs and trying to get proposals from some companies to go forward with a purchase. Yeah, thank you. Sure.
Thank you. And Water's Edge, or not healthcare, but dining. I noticed on your chart there's about a 75% overrun on labor. Labor cost was way over.
The only costs that are way over is Medicare and TRICARE expenses. And that's
Okay. Well, then I read it wrong.
For dining labor, year-to-date, it's over, but that's for the whole campus.
Pardon me?
Yes. I think it was 171,000 over budget for the whole campus year-to-date. So that's out of over a $6 million budget. So it's a lot of money, but it's not like a huge percentage of what they have for labor either.
That's
And-
not just for dining.
No, that's for the whole
Contract?
campus. That's for the whole campus, labor and
okay.
dining.
All right.
So yeah, it's a bigger picture. There's still a lot of money, but primarily that is all the different places that we offer, open, everything's, there's a lot of open venues, and people will probably, there's a lot of times when they're not open. So it's not like everything's open all the time, but that's what drives that a lot is the extra labor it takes to do everything everywhere on campus.
Do I understand correctly that there has never been a serious consideration of no name change? We jump directly to what will the name change be?
We evaluated whether to pursue that or not. The board actually had a 3-person committee evaluate the feasibility of a name change before the June board meeting. And at that meeting, the recommendation was to change the name and to move forward and to have this committee to study that. So that's the decision that was made. Yep. Other questions? Where we at here? Ooh. We got we'll take about two more questions and then we'll make.
I'm going to hand out a compliment. I've seen a lot of charts, Gordon, through the years on the finance committee, but I like the graphs. I really did. So my compliments to the resident that offered those, but I don't know about the color charts. I can't even match my ties with my shirts. Gloria says I'm colorblind, so I don't know about the pie chart. But I got a question for Tabitha. Sadly, we got one of our units over opening up over in Lakeside. So can she explain the pricing for units? You know, all these upgrades, we moved in, all of us, about a dozen years ago. Explain the pricing, how that goes for a unit that has all these upgrades, if you would, please. Tabitha.
I'm at the back of the room. You want me to come to the front?
Please, Tabitha.
Sure. So when a unit is vacated, we go into that unit and we look at everything that's in there. So if there's any upgrades that are done to the unit, the condition of the unit, what we need to change out, and then I give a recommendation after I go through. So what I'll do is I'll price out all of the upgrades, take into accountability whether those upgrades are a couple of years old, 10 years old, and kind of look at that. So for instance, plantation shutters in a unit can cost upwards of $8,000. So if we put those in 2020, I will depreciate those. If we put them in a couple of years ago, I'll depreciate them a little bit. But essentially, I go through, list all of the upgrades that are in the unit, and then I give those numbers to Gordon, and then Gordon will reprice that entry fee. Did that answer your question? For that individual unit. So yeah, in the last year, we have evaluated all of the units on campus that were vacant and have gone through. So each one of those units has its own entry fee. Did that answer? Okay, and Gordon's going to give you more. Okay.
Well, Tabitha's not giving herself the full credit. What she also looks at is the view, the whether it's in a good place in the campus, whether it has a backyard that's really nice or the backyard that is kind of really tight, and other things along that. So we also, if it's in, yes, backyards, cottages, location within the community, also on the high rise, what you're looking at. You know, what are you looking at? The pond? You're looking at the other places that we won't mention. They're not as fun. So she evaluates all that, and then that comes into the equation as well on a rating system that she rates it for those other amenities besides the upgrades that are out there. So then we look at what the established price is for the entrance fee chart, for the entrance fee rates that we move up. Once in a while we move them up. We moved them up just recently in February all the way across the campus. But we look at those rates as the base rate, and then whatever she gives me, and we work with Terry. The three of us work together hand in hand all the way through it. What then becomes the entrance fee on it to where it's variable up and down a little. It's not a big radical thing. Maybe it's 10% up, 10% down at the most. And so if it's got a good view, that's a little bit more. If it doesn't, that's a little bit less. And then what's already in the unit is another variable up and down from like the standard price. So our pricing sheets now, which is new since Terry got here, we're doing a range, and it can be maybe the standard is 400, but you're looking out over the pond. You've got some really nice upgrades, so maybe that's 408 or 410 or something. That's an up, and there's other things that would pull it down a little bit, but not in a radical way, just to customize it to that particular unit. That's what we're doing. I mean, we do that every day. And then the other thing that I alluded to it.
But a prospect could take something out too. Does that make sense? If there's something that's outrageously upgraded that they don't want in that unit,
Right.
Tell me about that. I mean,
Well, that becomes part of the equation too, in that do we need to take that out and make it saleable? Typically, that doesn't factor into the entrance fee on its own, because that's like we've got to get it to a baseline. Okay. There.
Just to clarify, when you're asking us to downgrade something, okay, I just want to make sure that I'm clear, because I don't want you guys to think that I'm taking out quartz and allowing somebody to put in granite. We still have a very strict standard. Oh, no, that's okay.
Tampa, we've got a resale, new
person coming in on Monmouth, and we're talking about upgrading. How are you handling something like that? They're upgrading almost the entire interior, exterior, of that H unit.
Sure. So this is a very rare instance. I think this particular unit is putting in the most upgrade dollars since I have been here, and I've been here 6 years. And the individual is paying for those upgrades. So obviously we have a standard in that we go through and evaluate if the flooring needs to be upgraded. So that would be on the ARC, but anything outside of the dollars that we would spend are going to that new resident. So he's paying for those.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Tab.
Maybe one or two more questions, and then we're running a little over our time. We'll be respectful of you.
It's on. Thank you. My question has to do with health care. With this change of going from military to what I call price of the ticket, if you meet the standards and you have the money, you can come in. How is that going to impact our health care for the future? We've been Medicare and TRICARE for life. Now it may be Medicare, but there'll be all sorts of different insurance companies for that additional 20%. And also, we've always been able to, for lack of a better word, escape having to go through VA approval for people in our health care. But now, with this change in our status, will there be VA approval needed for future residents in our health care? Thank you.
I can answer that. Typically, during the admission process, in the contracts, it stipulates that the prospective resident has to be on Medicare or have TRICARE as a supplement. We do not currently have contracts with Medicare Advantage plans, and that's a discussion that the marketing sales folks will have with prospective residents. We do not have a VA contract in healthcare, and that too, if that comes up, that will be a discussion with prospective residents. So we'll continue down that road having Medicare and TRICARE for life. And then if we have to in the future, we'll review to see if we need to have a contractual agreement with some Medicare Advantage plans, the big ones. There's 3 big ones out there right now. And we'll look at that and review that in the future if we have a considerable amount of folks having, a plan with one of the carriers. Any other questions?
Whoa, thank you. I'm sorry, I forgot my question. So I'll make one up. We have trees in our back, and this may not have anything to do with anything, but my trees in my backyard that are full of dead limbs, and there's one in another yard in back of me that has a serious dead limb on it that if it broke off and somebody was in the backyard could get real uncomfortable. I put in work orders for 3 years on these, and I've been told it's in process. And because of the background that I come from, I've learned to interpret code words. So I've basically determined that that's a code word, and I'll leave out what I think it is. I just want to know if somebody's going to come take care of the trees in the backyards where the dead limbs are before somebody gets hurt. Yeah, they fall out unless we're going to wait for the real strong storms. That generally helps. We get a lot of dead limbs laying around.
I will ping James on that and have Mario with Cleanscapes come by, sir, and look at those trees for you.
Yes, ma'am. Mario's been around, looked at the trees. No, he looked at the trees. He looked at the trees. He said, I'll make recommendations.
I'll make sure that I follow up personally on that one.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, I think we're toward the end of our time, and again, really want to thank you all for being here today. The three of us will remain for a little while afterward if you have any private questions, and thank you very much for being here and all you do, all right? Have a great day, and be in tune for the Independence Day celebrations coming up. We're going to have a great time and a great week coming up. And thanks, Gordon.